It's my pleasure to welcome you to opening day of American-made paintings and sculpture from the DeMell Jacobsen Collection. And it's also my privilege to introduce our speaker today, Diane DeMell Jacobsen. If all Diane DeMell Jacobsen had done was build the formidable collection from which we've sliced off about a quarter of the works and hung them in our galleries, that would be a lifetime's worth of achievement. But Diane is one of the most extraordinary people I've ever had the pleasure to meet. She worked for, right out of college, she went to work for IBM in the 60s and 70s, climbed right up the ladder of success, and had extraordinary experiences with that company. And for a woman in the 60s and 70s, you can imagine how hard she had to work to achieve that kind of success. And she's never stopped working hard, including working hard for us this weekend. And so thank you for that, Diane. And after her, she did some other stuff like ran an insurance company and other things as well. But she had the opportunity to go back to school, and she studied international diplomacy, where she got 2 master's degrees at Washington University and a Ph.D. in the subject. And her achievements in this particular field are also just amazing. And then she started building a collection. And she put the same kind of grit and enthusiasm into collecting. She and her late husband made a decision they were going to build a transformative collection, and transform it has. Her collection is in, here's the thing about Diane, she'll probably tell you this, I hope I'm not stepping on your talk, but she buys a work of art and she doesn't like take it home and hang it on her wall. She sends it to a place like the Dixon and we hang it on ours. And so the thing you have to realize is that when Diane saw this same exhibition at the Mint Museum in Charlotte last October, it was the first time she had seen this many of the works of art she owns under one roof. And that's just a small index of the incredibly generous person that, I am very, very fortunate to call my friend. So with that, let's give a big Memphis cheer, big welcome to Diane DeMell Jacobsen.
Well, thank you. Can you all hear me? And thank you very much for coming. I really, really appreciate that on a Sunday afternoon. Was there a football game that you're giving up this afternoon? I'm really impressed to see that this is a sellout audience and that they had to add chairs to be able to accommodate everybody that is here. It is a privilege for me. It really is. And Kevin, I think, told you, I had never seen all the paintings together before, because what our foundation does is we buy a work of art, we examine it carefully, we have it conserved if necessary, we spend hours and hours and hours trying to find just the right period frame, no reproductions preferably, and then we immediately send it to a museum. And we send it to museums that will make a difference in their collecting. And I'll have to admit, also to museums we like. And Kevin and his team, this is a team we really are impressed with. He's a great executive, and everybody on the staff that we've worked with so far is truly a delight. So thank you all for supporting the museum. Thank you, U.S. Bank, for keeping me honest. This is our investment manager. So he manages the finances of the foundation, and legal counsel, so they make sure that I don't end up in jail. So I'm very grateful that they drove down from St. Louis to be here today. Peter Scott Brown. He is a professor at the University of North Florida, and I sit on every class I can with Dr. Brown. Nobody teaches art better than he does. I am so fortunate. And he's here with his lovely wife, who is chief legal counsel for the Mayo Clinic, and his daughter Benedict, who I get to see all the time because we both swim laps every day at the Sawgrass Club. So I'm really pleased that you are here. We also have Andrew Walker and Andrew Eschelbacher. I've been working with them both in different institutions for a number of years, and they help me to understand what's a great painting versus a decorative painting. And everybody asks me the question, well, how do you differentiate a great painting, a masterpiece, from a decorative piece? It's the hardest thing to do. You have to look at thousands and thousands and thousands of paintings before you really can tell the difference. And you go to museums. If you have a collectors group, join the collectors group. Go with conservators. But at the end of the day, for me, a great painting is something that just takes my breath away. I look at it and I go, ah! And then I say, the more I look at it, it doesn't matter how detailed the painting is, the more I see. I have a different feeling, a different emotion every time when it's a really great painting. And I hope that you will have that with as many of these as you look at, and come again and again and again, because I think each time you look at a painting, you see something different in a great painting. Also, you'll notice in the exhibition there are QR codes, and you just have to get your iPhone to do one QR code. And then you can take it home, you can share it with your children, your grandchildren, your friends, your neighbors, and you have short videos of the different paintings. Not everyone has it. My goal in life is to have a video on every painting, but I'm not there yet. So give me a little more time and we'll have a video on every painting. But Kevin did 3 great videos for us, and Teresa Cunningham did a beautiful video on Charles Ethan Porter, and Andrew Eschelbacher did videos, and Dr. Brown did videos. And so do look at the videos in your leisure, and I think that you'll learn a lot about American art, because our goal is to try to build a collection that teaches America about our great artistic heritage. That's really what the goal is. It's not like, you know, some other collections that focus specifically and only get the top 5 artists. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. And I hope that when you look at the collection, maybe you'll get a sense of what we're trying to do. At least that's what I've been trying to do. Now, a couple of people were here the other night, and they've asked me the question, how did you get started and why? And it's kind of a personal story, but when I was a youngster, my mom used to ask us what we wanted to do on a day off from school. And I have 2 sisters. My younger sister is Lisette. My older sister is Nancy. And my younger sister always wanted to go to the museum. And she ended up being an art teacher. My older sister was happy doing most anything. She's easy to get along with. I wanted to go to New York to go to Horn and Hard Arts. I love food. We had a very simple diet when I was growing up, very Mediterranean, and nothing fancy. We were not affluent people. But Horn and Hard Art, you put a nickel in the slot. You could get chocolate cake. And then, like magic, no sooner did you take a chocolate cake out that another one appeared. What a deal. We got 2 nickels when we went, and I had a great time. But then we went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I can remember sitting there and being absolutely mesmerized. I think it was the landscape paintings that just took me to another place, places that I had never seen. And it's kind of the reason why I think some of those artists painted those scenes, because Americans back in the 1700s and 1800s, they weren't traveling to all these great destinations. But I got to travel there, and I saw these great works of art. So then, anytime we had a day off from school, I would ask my mom, just like my little sister, could we go to Horn and Hard Art and then go to the Met? In that order. So it's been really, it's been a lifelong journey for me And it's something that I hope you will take your children, your grandchildren, your friends, relatives, bring them here. Let them know about our really rich artistic heritage. You know, people know about Monet, they know about Van Gogh, they're going to that show. But we have great American artists, and we want everyone to know how really great they are. So I do hope that you'll come and come frequently and experience the joy that I certainly have. And I suspect that because you're here this afternoon, you experience that joy as well. So I'm really pleased that you're here. Now, people are telling me that they really want to hear the story of some of the paintings that have been collected. So I'm going to share a couple of personal stories with you about collecting. And I'll start with George and Martha Washington. Now, we all know George and Martha Washington. Everybody knows George, certainly. And I was really delighted that I was able early on to buy this George Washington by Rembrandt Peale. And you may know that he actually sat, when he was 17 years old, he sat there and he was painting and drawing George Washington when his father, Charles Willson Peale, was also doing an official portrait. So this is really a painting from life. And once he painted it, everybody in America wanted a George Washington. And who wouldn't? First President of the United States, they really wanted George Washington. And I was fortunate to buy this George Washington many years ago. But deep down, I kind of wanted to see Martha. Now, before you pass judgment on Martha, you have to understand that when George decided it was time to get married, he did the equivalent of Match.com back then. He went to all his colleagues and friends and business associates and said, "I'd like you to help me select a bride." And he got a list and he interviewed, or one might say he dated, a couple of these gals. And he finally decided on Martha. Now, this painting of Martha was done 10 years after George. So she looks a little bit older. But she was really a spunky gal. She wore purple shoes. Back then, she wore purple shoes. She managed a huge estate. Now, she happened to have been wealthy, but I don't think that affected his decision at all. But naturally, I wanted to have Martha and George together. So, by some miracle, a pair, a George and a Martha, were coming up at auction. And they were being sold separately. So, can you all hear me well? Even in the back? Okay. I tend to talk with my hands and I kind of bounce around, so if you can't hear me, just raise your hand. But anyway, this auction was coming, and I made up my mind. I said, "Okay, Diane, just bite the bullet. In order for you to be able to be sure you get Martha, you're going to have to buy another George. Because the person who's going to buy George is going to want Martha. So step up to the plate and just do it." And the auction starts, and the bidding goes, and they started with George, and it went, and it went, and it went, and it went. And I thought, oh my God, this thing's going to go for $1 million, and I'm not going to be able to get it. And I felt terrible, because George and Martha would never be together. But all of a sudden, the guy who bought George stands up and starts walking out of the room. And the auctioneer's running after him and said, "Sir, don't leave, no, Martha's coming." And he stood up and he said, "I didn't come here to buy Martha. I came here to buy George." Now, they said, "If you want to see George, you can come to my ranch anytime you like." And he left. And I bought Martha. Every painting has a story, and I wish that I could capture you for 5 hours and tell you every story, but I'll just tell you a couple, because some of them are just so special. And this is a painting by Sarah Ball Dodson, and she was being sold in London. And even though I worked for a technology company for 25 years, I was afraid that if I were going to bid online, that something would go wrong. So the auction house said, you know, just come down to our auction house, and you can, rather than bid from home or do it on your cell phone or whatever, and we'll do it right there. And I had given them my cell number, she had given her cell number. The auctioneer in London had the cell number, and the auction started, and we lost the internet connection. And I had hired a conservator. Now, you always should go and look at every painting in person, but this one was in London. It was a little hard to get there. So I hired a top conservator who examined the painting exhaustively and sent me images under ultraviolet light, which you should do as well. And they had images of the back, so I could check to see if it was wax lined, glue lined, no lining. I could check to see if there was any damage to the canvas, if there were strip lining. You all probably know all the things you need to do when you examine a painting, but if you have to examine a painting to a fare thee well. Never take a condition report as is. But I was fortunate. This was, according to this conservator, in great condition. And I really wanted it because this lovely girl was holding these beautiful butterflies, and the butterflies are attracted to this special kind of honey from a mountain in Greece called Hymettus. And I thought the butterflies were beautiful. She was lovely. I loved the Celtic style belt that she was wearing. A young, lovely girl. I wanted the painting. But as I said, the auction started, the internet went out, I was having a heart attack, and then the auctioneer in London gets on the cell phone, his cell phone. He calls my cell phone and he says, don't worry, Dr. Jacobsen, I gotcha. Do you want to give another bid? And I'm thinking, is this for real? You know? Then the auction house stepped in, everybody stepped in, and we got the painting. And I thought, oh yes, I'm so pleased. Now, if you buy a painting overseas, though, you know, you have to go through customs. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. They had shipped to the United States, and I'm not getting the painting. So I called them up and I said, you know, could I come down? I want to make sure everything is okay. No, you can't come down. I said, well, I'd like to get the painting. They said, no, you can't come down. Well, when are you going to send me the painting? And I called week after week after week, and finally they said, we sent the painting out to the FDA. I said, you sent the painting to the FDA? What for? It's our procedure. I said, no, I want to go out there. I called the FDA. I couldn't get through. I finally got somebody at the FDA, and I said, where's my painting? I want my painting. And they said, can't release it to you, lady. I said, well, why not? They said, it's against the law to be shipping butterflies. It did say butterflies. You have to watch the names on paintings, because this one said butterflies of Hymettus. And I said, those aren't butterflies. That's an oil painting. It says right here, there's butterflies. It was in New York, right? So I just was beside myself. I said, all right, I have to come out. If you're going to open that up. He says, we got to open up in a sealed room because them butterflies is going to ride right out. Every painting has a story. Some are more entertaining than others. But I am so happy with this beautiful painting. I just love it. Now, one of the things that we concentrate on, and in fact a couple of people who I talked to before the lecture started talked about the fact that the frames were beautiful, and I really want you to look at frames. Frames are a work of art. I mean, it shouldn't detract from a painting. It shouldn't overly enhance it. It should complement the painting. And when you have the right frame on a painting, you will be just blown away. Now, there's one particular painting that has been here since I bought it, and we recently found just the right painting, just the right frame for it. So I challenge you, when you go to the galleries, to try to figure out which one it is, because I'm excited about the frame, and I wonder if you'll notice. I hope you will. But I'll show you a little bit about frames and why a frame makes a difference. This was a frame that actually, this was the second frame. The first frame came and it was really a dog. And so I had a frame maker who made a frame that I thought was rather attractive. But then we talked to the specialist and they advised me that it was totally inappropriate. I looked for the right frame for 14 years. 14 years. And I'll ask you to tell me what you think. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this painting is that the name was wrong. And you have to be very careful because sometimes it's a dealer that puts the name on, sometimes it's the person who owns the painting that puts the name on, and you can't guarantee that the name on the painting is right. So the name on this was Sacristy in Cordoba, Spain. Well, I have a friend who was stationed in Spain, so I asked her to please go and find the sacristy in Cordoba. And she went to Cordoba and she looked and she looked and she looked and she said, "Diane, I'm so sorry, I could not find it." I just thought, oh, I love to go to each place where we have a painting and I find the location. Anyway, about 6 months later, she went on another trip and she went to Granada and she took a picture, and it's the sacristy in Granada, Spain. Now, as you know, your history of Spain, they were invaded by the Moors, and there's a lot of Moorish architecture. So when our frame experts found this frame for me, I mean, with the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful carving in it, you just look at it and you say, it's exactly the right frame. It really makes a difference. Now you can tell me if I'm wrong, if you don't think it is, but I think it is. I think it's just absolutely great. And it complements the painting. I don't think it overwhelms it, but I think it complements it. So I'm really thrilled. I'm really thrilled with that. Oh, did I not show you the comparison? Yeah. This is the old one, this is the new one. What do you think? Who likes the new one the best? Oh, good. Because it cost a fortune, so I'm glad you like it. Now, it was at the time of the pandemic, the American Association of Museum Directors said that if a museum had, 2 or 3 of a particular painting, and they needed the funds to be able to manage their collection better, they would be allowed to deaccession the painting. Normally, if you deaccession a painting, which means if you sell it, but if you deaccession a painting, you have to take that money and put it into another painting. You can't use it for any of your operating expenses. But in this case, they said you could use it for some expenses to maintain the collection, and therefore a painting by Mary Cassatt was on the market, being deaccessioned from the Brooklyn Museum. Now, one of the things I enjoy doing is I like to take children with me to museums. A friend of mine in New York has a grandson, and I took him to the auction. Now, we had it private because it was during COVID, and so it was just the grandson and my friend and myself and the head of American Paintings, and we saw this beautiful Mary Cassatt. And I asked him, now tell me, Joseph, which painting do you like here? And he immediately went to this painting. And I said, tell me, why do you like it? And he said, well, I like the orange dress. Okay. And he said, I like the baby, and I like the fact that you can see the baby's butt and even the crack in the mirror. The the auction director said, now tell me, Joseph. No, she asked me. She said, how old is Joseph? And I said, he's 5 years old. And he stood up and he said, I'm 5.5. Okay. But so after the auction was over, he asked his grandfather, what did Diane buy? And he explained that I bought the Mary Cassatt. And he said, please tell her she's got to repaint that frame. Now, I did have to replace the frame with a period frame. This is a period frame. But I'd never talked to him about frames before, and he knew, I'm going to go back just a second, he knew that that was the wrong frame for the painting, even stylistically. It couldn't be gilded. And you had to get the right frame, which as you see is an 1880s frame with those beautiful acanthus corners and the leaf and flower motif. It's the right frame. Now compare the two. Was it worth it? Yes, I agree. I think it was really worth it. Oh, I think I'm going to give it away. I was going to ask you to guess this, and you've already seen the wall hewn. Oh, okay. Now, Kevin called me up one day, and he said there's this great wall hewn, and he said, I'd really like to have it for the Mint. So now, you know, this is a pretty somber circus person. But most of his circus figures are pretty somber and very, very striking. And I don't know, the frame didn't do anything for it. So we had the frame experts come and take a look at it. And wouldn't you know, they found the right frame. And it is an artist frame by Joseph Greenberg. And it's hand-carved wood. It's got that swept wave edging, and it has the wave and dot motif, and it has bevel edging on the side. So the curator for the Mint Museum commented, he said, you know, Diane, he said, the painting really looks great in the new frame, but she's still not smiling. There's the side-by-side. An improvement? If I have the energy, and if my wonderful staff has the energy, we're going to write a book on frames. And I should introduce you to Heidi Smith and to Joan Oklovich. They are truly the best, and they work tirelessly. We now have 400 works of art in the collection, and it's only the three of us. We like to put every cent we have into the art. That's our goal. So I really thank you so much because you do such a great job. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about, are you still with me? If I'm going too long, you tell me, just give me the hook. I could talk forever. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about the organization of the exhibition. And we start mostly with portraits. And I think that what the excuse me, what the Dixon has done is organize it beautifully. And they have a whole hallway of portraits. I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of dry. And so the first portrait you see is by Benjamin West. And he did it of Booth Gray, who actually was a bit of an artist himself. But he's the earliest one that we have in the collection from 1766. And it's gorgeous. The condition was flawless. And Benjamin West taught so many American artists how to paint. And back in the days before we had cell phones and Instagram and all that, if you wanted to have an image of yourself for posterity, you had to have a painting done. And look at that face. Look how lovely it is. And what's nice is, I love it when a painting has some of the artist's instruments in it. And he's holding a device that is used to paint. And I just think he's just gorgeous. Now next to him is a painting by Sarah Miriam Peale. And she's actually the daughter of James Peale, again the famous Peale family. And you all probably know that girls weren't allowed to go to art school because they thought it was inappropriate for them to see naked models, and especially male models. So they weren't allowed to go to art school. So that's how you have some of the women were daughters and sisters and wives of artists. That's how they learned. They learned from people who were also great artists. And I think this is an interesting portrait, especially, I love her hairdo. Can you imagine getting up in the morning and putting these curls in your hair to try to get ready and making sure you had a touch of ermine showing and, you know, a beautiful gown? But how lovely, how lovely. She was the first of these commercially successful women artists. and her works are beautiful. We have 2 of her works in the collection, so I feel lucky. One of the things that we have done with the collection is the collection should be representative of America. And with all due respect, it just shouldn't be men. It shouldn't be just, it should be males, whites, blacks, Indian, American Indian. They should have women artists. We want to have diversity. And right from the beginning, that was something that was important to me, to have diversity in the collection. And I hope as you go through, you'll notice. It doesn't say on the label, this is an African-American artist, all right? It doesn't say that. But every category is represented, including American Indian. So I have a friend of mine who's with the Mayo Clinic as a oncologist, and she's Choctaw Indian. And she's been teaching us about American Indian, and we also have a collection of American Indian art. And someday I hope you get to see it. It's got castinas and it's got the baskets, and it's really a lot of fun. So, and it's a learning experience for me as well. The other section that we're going to come to then is American landscape. And again, this is partially because of the excitement I had with the landscapes that I saw at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I love landscapes. And this one is by Asher B. Durand. And it's quite frankly one of the very few landscapes that doesn't have any hint of humanity in it. So there are no structures, there are no people. It's the beauty of the nature and the beauty of our country. And we have the most beautiful country. So it is thrilling to me to be able to show it by Asher B. Durand. And then next to that is a painting by William Bradford, and it's called Ship Trapped in Packed Ice. And it really feels cold when you look at it. And the artist used to go on expeditions specifically with these companies because he wanted to paint on site. And this is up in Labrador, if I remember correctly, near Greenland. And, you know, they got stuck. They got stuck on the icebergs. Now, I may sound like I'm boasting, and I don't mean to boast, but on the other hand, there is a Bradford at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which mesmerized me when I saw it, but it's 2 inches smaller than ours. Now, genre painting just fascinates me. It really does. And the kids love it when they come to the museum. They absolutely love to see these paintings. The one on the left is called Counterfeit Note. Now I ask you, what do you think is going on in this painting? The painting is by Daniel Huntington, and he did the painting in the 1850s, so we didn't have a banking system then. And a lot of people were trying to pass counterfeit note. And if you know what they did, they would give a note that was bigger than the purchase, and then they get real cash back. And I'm told that they typically worked in pairs. That's what I'm told. So I ask you, what do you think is going on in this painting? Anyone want to venture a guess? Okay, there's a hand.
It looks like he's a shyster in the back left corner, and his accomplice is either the one that's whispering in the ear or the one who's looking at the fabric is got to be his accomplice to distract from the counterfeit note.
You're right, there's an accomplice in this. There probably is an accomplice. But what do you think about the one in the back who's pointing? What do you think, that with the older gentleman? Do you think that's really an accomplice? Or what do you think that person is? Do you think maybe that the owner of the shop, it's his wife, and she's saying to him, I don't know if that note is legitimate. What do you think? Now, I'm such a romantic. When I looked at the picture, I thought, well, the guy in the back is a shyster, and he's conned this beautiful girl into letting her think he's going to marry her, and she's there picking out this white fabric as a wedding gown. I'm truly romantic and totally off base. The other interpretation is that she's in on the deal. And the reason they have that interpretation is that the dog knows. Always count on the dog. The painting next to that is by Joseph Seymour Guy, and it's called Bedtime Stories. And it's Goldilocks. She's reading about Goldilocks. And she's getting to the really scary part of Goldilocks. And the kids' eyes are just wide open and they're just absolutely terrified. And she's nicely dressed, wouldn't you say? You know, she doesn't look like somebody who's poor. And the background doesn't look like it's poor. But he did two versions of this painting. He did one where it's a very modest, poorly dressed girl reading to her brothers, and he did this one. And the one that is of the more modest girl is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I have the one where she is a little better dressed. That's not by design, I was just lucky. Every now and then you get kind of lucky. Still life paintings. There's a whole room of still life paintings here. I hope you get a chance to go in and look at those still life paintings, because I love still lifes. I think they're so wonderful. And you look at this Peale, the James Peale. Remember, James Peale is the father of Sarah Miriam Peale that painted the one with the girl with the hairdo. And look at the peppers, and look at the beets, and the leaves on the beets. I mean, it was such luscious, beautiful looking fruit. And it's very rare. Most still life paintings are flowers, but it's rare to find vegetables. So you can imagine how excited I was when I found vegetables. First of all, I love to eat vegetables, but I happen to love to eat anything. But these vegetables were just luscious. I'm getting too close. I get too excited when I talk about vegetables. Now, if you look over to the painting next to it by William Harnett, The Still Life on a Tabletop. Why do you think he painted this? You know, he's got the cigar still lit. He's got the matches. Crumb of bread. Some people say that this is a vanitas painting. It talks to life and the shortness of life. And he looks like he left right in the middle, and his life was interrupted. It happens to be a trompe-l'oeil painting, and you know that means fool the eye. So it makes you think you're looking at a newspaper. It makes you think you're looking at a bottle of beer. It makes you think that you're looking at the matches that have just been extinguished. But really, you're looking at a painting, a beautiful painting. No butterflies in it though, so it made it through customs. Now this one was bought in the United States. This is a painting by Charles Ethan Porter of sunflowers. Who doesn't love sunflowers? They're just beautiful. Now most of the time when you think of sunflowers, you think of Van Gogh, right? In fact, I'm reading the book now, Van Gogh, A Life. I don't know if you've read it. It's really incredible. But Van Gogh is a tortured soul. I mean, the angst that he had in his life comes through in every painting and every sunflower he does. Charles Ethan Porter was not a tortured soul. He saw the beauty. He saw the different stages of life. If you look very up towards the top, there's a tiny bud coming out, and then you have a beautiful sunflower in bloom, and then you have a sunflower more towards the end of its time. But he is a black artist, and he had the support of Samuel Clemens, who did Mark Twain, and he provided him financial support so that he could continue his education, and his paintings are lovely. And I'm just thrilled that we have sunflowers. They're just beautiful flowers. And what's particularly nice here at the Dixon is you treasure flowers, and your gardens are gorgeous. I can't wait to come back again in the spring. I've been here before a couple of times, but I took a riverboat cruise up the Mississippi, or down the Mississippi, but I'd like to come during the flower season. All right, we have, are you all hanging in okay? Is it too much? You tell me. All right. We are now going to look at a painting by John Singer Sargent, and it's Elsie Wagg. And I said every painting has a story, right? And not just an acquisition story, but a story itself. And Elsie, you can tell Elsie from her back bent hand that this is a woman who is confident, right? Well, Elsie never married, but she had a goal. And all the gardens in England were private. The public couldn't go into the gardens, and they were quite frankly in disrepair. So she decided her task was going to be to restore the gardens and make them available to the public. And that's exactly what she did. You had to pay a little fee in order to get into the gardens to support the conservation of the gardens. And then the money that they earned paid for the nurses' retirement, because they didn't have a retirement system nor a healthcare system for the nurses. So that money took care of the gardens and took care of the nurses. And she did it all on her own. So I've really grown to love Elsie Wagg. On the slide to the right, I still call things slides. In my day, it was always slides. Now it's PowerPoint. So, but the one to the right is by Child Hassam, and it's called Square at Pont-Aven. That's Pont-Aven, France. And you know, I was puzzled by that. I like to go to the location of the paintings and try to find them. I do that. If it weren't for COVID, you know, I would go to all of them, but I went to every location. So I went to Pont-Aven, France. I went with a niece, and we trekked all over looking for this particular spot and couldn't find it. So I asked somebody. I always bring a picture with me, and I asked somebody, "Could you show me where this is?" And they said, "Oh yes, you go to the joaillerie." And that's the jewelry store. The gentleman there, he knows every street here in Pont-Aven. So we trudged off to the jewelry store. We go in, we show him the picture. "Ah, madame, but of course." He closes the shop and says, "I will take you there." "I will take you there." And he did. And we walked and walked and walked. We went right to that spot. It hasn't changed, which is one of the fun things about Europe. It hasn't changed except for the color of the shutters. Can you imagine? I was absolutely thrilled to be able to find that particular spot. Here we have John Henry Twachtman, who paints very thinly to give you this impression of the scene. The artists like to get out of places like New York, and in the nice weather they go up northeast, and he went up to the harbor in Gloucester. And also Emil Bistrom, who went 25 years later, went to Monhegan. And I took a boat trip between those two islands, and Wyatt's wife has a house there, and she was waving to us when we came. But the only thing is that the artist took some license in this picture, because the two mountains really are about the same size. But he made one substantially smaller than the other. And really that makes it much more interesting. So I forgive him for that, and it still is the intense colors of Bistrom, I just think are wonderful. And all right, now we have Patrick Henry Bruce. So we're really moving ahead now to modernism. And it took me a long time to embrace modernism. It took me a long time to take abstract expressionism in contemporary art. But now I see it. And they saw the world differently than I saw it. And they took shapes and they made them into something different. This is actually a little still life painting. And when I first looked at it, I didn't know that. But then look further and look at the table. See the gray table? It's a still life on a table, done in very, very unusual shapes and colors and contrasts of colors. But he saw the world differently. And sadly, he was a very troubled person. He burned most of his works of art. There are only 21 remaining works from Patrick Henry Bruce, just 21. And we are so fortunate to have this one. Now next to him is Raymond Johnson. and it's called Rain Opus to Vera. And you can see kind of puffy clouds, and then you can see the rain coming down on that single little bit of greenery where something is growing. And Vera was in a opera house, and he did set designs in the opera house. And so I've always felt that the lines on the side might be the curtain. And I thought, isn't this nice? He's doing this painting for his wife, Vera. Isn't it romantic? Isn't it lovely? And then we did the research and found out he was having an affair. But it still is a beautiful painting. I forgive him that indiscretion as long as he painted well. During the Depression, the government set up the WPA. You've all heard of it. And nobody could make any money. It's just like what went through when we had COVID. The artists couldn't buy paint, they couldn't buy canvases, they couldn't feed their families. So the government said, go ahead and paint. And you can do murals if you want in public buildings. It's very rare to be able to find a painting that is an easel-sized painting. And it's a big painting, but it's not a mural. And they wanted to stress work. Work is so important. And as you can see, this is a steel mill. Get the people in the country back to work and show what can be done once we get through this depression. So I'm lucky to have a WPA picture. Then next to that is a painting by Alan Rohan Crite. It's called Play at Darkness. And this is another black artist. And the kids are having a really good time. Mom's out there, with the stroller, and the young man in the foreground has his boxcar. He took an old crate and made a boxcar scooter out of it. And some of them are playing on the swings, and it's a happy time, a really happy time. And I want you to be sure to look at the frame, because when you go into the gallery and look at the frame, it's a wormy chestnut frame, and it was right for the period, and I think it's right for the painting, but you tell me if I made a mistake or I didn't, because I love the frame, but you can tell me honestly. I won't hold it against you. Sculpture. Oh, I love sculpture. Andrew Eschelbacher knows how much I love sculpture. That's how I met him. He asked to borrow a sculpture for the Portland Art Museum, and then he taught me about sculpture, what to look for, what kind of patina you need to look for. The artist adds the patina to the bronze. Make sure the patina is in good shape. There are no pit marks. There's no corrosion. There's so much to learn about sculpture, and if you really want to learn, ask Andrew. He really knows sculpture. He's now at the Amon Carter Museum, so that's not so far away, and he's taught me a lot. And he did the video for the St. Gaudens, the Augustus St. Gaudens Puritan. And look at that Puritan. This is the Puritan spirit in America. He's standing and he's commanding that position, and he's what we all stand for. And I just think it's great. But next to him is a sculpture by Elizabeth Catlett. And Elizabeth Catlett, who is also a black artist, and she actually had to go to Mexico to be able to practice her craft. And look at the anguish in that sculpture. Look at the patina, that gray, streaky kind of patina. It's not the shiny bronze that you expect. And when you go into the exhibition, you'll see several gorgeous sculptures that have that beautiful patina and shiny bronze. And this one stands out because it's so different. And her movement and her position is just really like she has struggled. And it's just amazing that she is such a fine artist. Now, we had some tough decisions to make. How are we doing on time? Is it time? Do you want me to leave? Okay. All righty. Well, I'm only going to speak a little bit longer, okay? And then if you really can't stand it, you just, give me the cut mark. But making a decision about what goes into an exhibition and what gets to stay is really hard, because I love everything. And I have two Henry pictures, Robert Henry. Now, give me a show of hands. If you had to make the decision, would you put the one with the red shawl? How many people would put the red shawl into the exhibition? Okay, about evenly divided. And the rest, would you put in the Asian American? See the hands? Okay, okay. You can imagine how hard it was for me to make this decision, but I'm going to share with you why. I have a niece that we adopted from Korea, and I would take her to the museum to look at art. And one day we're looking at all the portraits, and she said to me, "Aunt Diane, how come there aren't any people here that look like me?" And I said, "I have got to get this painting, Chow Choy." She's just a very special, special girl. And we have a huge population of Asian Americans in the United States. And I want everybody to feel at home at the Dixon and at every museum you go to. So that's why we have Chow Choy. And it's a good painting as well. Here's my other decision. Both of these paintings are by Theodore Robinson. All right? Who would take the one of the girl with the red hat and the little scarf shawl? Okay. And who would take Washing Day? It's split again. No wonder it was so hard for us to make the decision, because they're both interesting. The little girl on the left has that beguiling, innocent look. She's in a Stanford White frame, which is one of the most famous frame makers in America. And there's something about her. She's sitting there. She's getting paid. She's from Naples, and she's getting paid to sit there, but her family needs the money. So, you know, she's in there, and she said, "Mom and Dad said I have to sit here, I'm going to sit here." But she's special. She's really special. And look at those lovely eyes, and I just love her. But then again, you look at Washing Day, and it's an impressionist painting. And she's drying the sheets. In the days where we used to hang our laundry outside, that's how they dried the sheets. And it has the lovely broken brushwork, and it's been on loan to the Amon Carter ever since I first acquired it. And we do little tours for third graders. And we used to do them with the original works of art. Now I do it with canvas prints. And I've had this painting for a long time, even though it's not been in my possession. It's been at the museum. At least I had a canvas print of it. And so we had this third grader come by, and they told us what they liked. And this third grader said that the thing that they liked the most was the cat. And I looked at it. I had never really noticed the cat. It takes a little girl, a little child, with big, big, beautiful eyes to say what appeals to them the most is the cat. And that, I just thought that was great. Now I have only a couple more minutes, and I do encourage you to try to get a catalog, because there are in the catalog 256. Oh yes, yes. Yeah, I should hang it up high. Yeah, but you can, if you. I will tell you, you can buy it in the gift shop. But then for your out-of-town friends, you can order it online. Only you order it through that QR code there's a sheet sitting out there, and the lady wraps it up beautifully, puts in a little note to whoever your friend is, that your relative who lives far away. And then if you say that you're a friend of Diane, you get free shipping. I'm thrifty. I want every penny to go to the art. So I'll give you just a quick run through for some of the most recent purchases, all right? And then we will stop. What do we have, like 4 minutes left? Okay. This is by Marguerite Zorak, a woman artist. Her husband is famous. She hasn't gotten the recognition she deserves. And this is a family portrait. So in a sense, it's kind of like a self-portrait. And this one is by Catherine Dreyer, a really surrealist picture. I'm trying to embrace some of the more modern things. All right, it's a little tough, but you stick with it a while and you get it. And this one is by Pierce, And it's a very touching picture with sharecroppers. And this one we just recently bought by Ernie Barnes. Ernie Barnes, if you heard the story, did you read about it in the New York Times about these two fellows came to the auction? And it was not this picture, it was another picture by Ernie Barnes. And they wanted that picture and they were going to get it. And I think the estimate was like 300 to 500,000. And the bidding went up. And it was 7, and it was $1 million, and it was $2 million, and it was $3 million, and it was $4 million, and it was $5 million, and it was $6 million, and it was $7 million, and it was $8 million, and it was $9 million. And the audience is sitting there, and the guy got to the $7 million, he stood up and he said, I'm going to get this picture, so you might as well give up now. And the other guy said, you may get it, but I'm going to make you pay. This never happens at an auction. We were all absolutely stunned. But coincidentally, I had been to the dealer just before the auction, and I knew this was being sold privately. And as the hammer came down on $15 million for the painting that these two macho guys were going after, I said, I'll buy the Ernie Barnes Singer. And quite frankly, I think the Singer is better, and I can assure you it didn't cost anything like those big ticket numbers. But there's energy in that picture. He's singing his heart out. And you know, he's not in a fancy place. He's got a light bulb, a crack in the ceiling. But boy, does he embrace the music. So I'm thrilled that we have that painting. And then this is by John Nieto, and it's the Hoop Dancers. And again, this is American Indian, and this is a dance they do all the time. And I think it's kind of nice, you know, that we have American Indians represented. We also have in the gallery Pomo Indians represented. And there is a good statement on our climate issues by Alexis Rockman. And as you probably read recently, that major part of the iceberg fell off in Antarctica. They say it's the size of Houston, and it cleaved off. And I went to Alaska with one of my professors, and we did borings in the ice because we bought a new mass spectrometer, and we measured all the bubbles to see the content over a century. But you go down deep enough, you can see what the climate change is. And I thought, this speaks to an issue that it's on everyone's mind. Some people more than others, but I thought it was a great painting and a good thing that we can talk about. And then this one I just bought, and every now and then you buy a painting you just can't resist. It may not be the most famous artist, and it may not be a scene you have to have, but I said, children will come to this museum and they'll look at these bicycles and they'll smile. And it makes me smile. So that's all I have today. I want to thank you all for coming. I can't thank you enough for supporting the Dixon. It's just a great museum, and it's truly a pleasure to have you here and supporting American art. Thank you.
Diane, will you take a question or two?
Well, I'll take a question, and if I can't answer it, I'll have Kevin answer it.
When you acquire the frames, do you seek out the exact size, or have you ever altered them?
We have altered them.
So when you bought the circus, the one with the circus person, was that an altered frame? Did you alter that one?
A little bit. Sometimes the way you alter it, though, is you don't have to actually cut the frame in any part. You could add a fillet, that's that gold piece, and in that case we added the fillet so we could get the dimensions just right. And I thought that the fillet actually helped the painting, and it gave a little bit of brightness. So, and the original design of the frame, though, stayed intact. It is tough sometimes to have to cut them, okay? But that's a good question. That means you are looking at frames, so you all can take off now and go look at the paintings and the frames. And again, thank you so much for coming.